So start in January with the utilities, and then March with the street, wrap that up by the boat show next year, and then start thinking about whether we want to do Hillman Garage that following year or the year after. Mr. Beecham's here. That's one, I think he's still here, maybe he's left, but that's one of the projects that he's looking at is what's the best way to phase that, what's the best way to finance that? Is a P3 the best option, or are we going to finance it as a city? All of those things need to be looked at and considered before we're going to be ready to move forward.
Alderman Pan?
Thank you. Mr. Gerald, do you have a ballpark idea of when we would be working on the Hillman Garage, knocking it down, building something up? I mean, I know it's not, maybe a bit speculative at this point.
Yeah,
but
so again, next year, 2018 is when we plan to do Main Street. So 2018 is Main Street, so next year, starting in January. So at the earliest, it would be 2019, and it could be pushed back to 2020. We've got a structural engineer that's looking at, I'm sure you've seen some of the things that we've done out there to bulk things up a little bit. But he's confident that we can get through a couple more years. So it's all a matter of when we're ready to push forward with it and how we want to proceed as far as the financing goes.
How long do you anticipate the Main Street project taking once we get going, and how long do you anticipate the Hillman Garage project?
Right, so Main Street, we're going to start with the utilities. So again, what we want to do is we want to install services for sprinkler lines to all the businesses that don't have those. That's going to start in January and wrap up in March. In March, we'll start the Main Street project. We plan to start at the top by Church Circle and work our way down and be done no later than the start of the boat show in October. Hopefully it'll be much before that, but you know, we're talking roughly April through probably at least August and maybe September.
So 4 or 5 months for Main Street.
April through August or September, whatever number of months that is.
Right. And the Hillman Garage, again, it's a little far away, but ballpark?
I would say probably a good year, just because that's such a tight spot there, a year to do that. And that's assuming that we do a lot of precast work, that where we bring in the members, the structural members that are already cast, so that'll shorten
really
it up.
Only 1 year for the garage?
That may be optimistic, but that's got to be fast-tracked. It just absolutely has to be.
Make no mistake, I'm delighted. I thought it would be more than 2 years.
No, I think it could be done in a year.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, if I might continue very briefly.
Please.
Look, it seems to me that if we're going to put employees out of the Hillman Garage, and I know that's a little strong, but in effect that's really what we're doing, that the time to do it would be when we have to put them out of the garage anyway, in 2019 or 20. I don't. I mean, I understand why we may want to have that done from a financial standpoint, but when I take into account the other factors, I think that it seems like that's the time to do it, not now. Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
And that's if we're going to do it.
We are not good stewards.
Yes.
We're discussing the amendments.
That is fair. We are kind of jumping around on that.
It's all related.
I'll let Alderwoman Finlayson finish, but then we probably should vote the amendments up or down.
I'm discussing the whole thing, including the amendment. Sorry.
That's okay.
As I was about to say, we're not good stewards of our employees. Okay, so this is the employee advocate coming out, and I'm not ashamed of that fact. We have not demonstrated that there is this need. They are a target for us, and I don't understand why. We are a service organization. They provide the service for us. This is you got to bear with it, speech. You've heard it over and over, and obviously you need to hear it some more. And we don't take care of our employees, but we expect others to take care of their employees. Any day you can drive into the garage, and the upper level is empty. I'm not sure what numbers SP Plus is giving us to suggest that our garage is full all the time. It is not. We have not looked at other options. You know, the young people who park in our garage from September, or, well, it's going to be September now through June, who go to St. Mary's, are not there for 3 months during the summer. So why wouldn't we sell them a special pass so that they can park there during the school year that will free up parking during the summer, which is our heaviest tourist months? I mean, there are other considerations we should be taking before we decide to do something like kicking the employees out. I mean, what analysis has been done to show that taking the employees out is going to improve business on Main Street? Because I assume that's what the purpose of this is for. You know, we still know that people want to park close to wherever they're going, and they're going to troll Main Street until they find a space. And if they can't find a space, then they'll end up in the garage, okay? But in the meantime, we've got empty spaces. Have we thought about making the employees park only on the third level? So, because the convenience for everybody else. Because people will drive around on the second level and keep driving because they don't want to go up to the third level, okay? So there are other considerations. So I just don't understand why our employees, the people who serve our community and work for us, are our target here. Thank you.
Alderman Arnett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, because you're only looking at one side of the equation, the overall purpose here is it's not just targeting the employees of the city, it's also targeting the employees of the businesses downtown who take up parking spaces so that customers and visitors can't park. And we're going to have to come to grips with this at some point. I admit I'm going to vote to not deal with it now, but I would want to ask Mr. Gerald, it seems to me one of the solutions, and I know way back when Rob Schutz was here, this was a discussion, there is a possibility of lowering the distance between the floors and adding another floor. There's also the possibility of going down, even with water table issues. And so if the garage, when we get to it, is going to be 1 or 2 more stories, won't this obviate the problem of accommodating our employees and the business employees and still having enough room for visitors and shoppers?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make an argument now that generally during the working hours that city employees are parking in that garage, the garage typically isn't full. I mean, most of the full days, the city employees park in another location, the high demand days during the day. Most of the demand is at night and on weekends, and that's when the city employees aren't here. Will we get to that point? Hopefully we will get to that point in the future, and we will need additional capacity. I'm just not sure that we have that situation right now, but we will certainly look at additional capacity. When you go underground, those spaces become very, very expensive to build. Mm-hmm. But we'll look at all those options and figure out what's best.
Right. Okay. So just as a follow-on to my questioning, Joe, can you elaborate a little bit more about what it's not, the attempt here is not to hit the employees. The attempt is to put in place information that we've received from SP Plus, and I guess I'd really like to hear a little more elaboration on that, and also how, I mean, obviously you put in the legislation, so you feel it's necessary, but how critical it is that we do this legislation, and whenever time we have to do it, whether it's now or 2 years from now.
The point of this legislation, we're making a concerted effort to convince the business community to have their employees park in the satellite garages. And so that the inner city garages, so to speak, are available for customers. And the essential point of this legislation is leadership by example.
Right.
It's hard to go, tell the restaurants and the retail shops, no, your employees have got to go park somewhere else, and they go, what about you guys? That's the core of this legislation.
Right, okay, thank you.
Alderman Pfeiffer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Transportation Committee spent 2 sessions on this, chaired by our friend Alderman Budge, and he was very responsive, I think, to a lot of concerns brought forward by the employees and sort of raising some of these issues. The amendments are an attempt, I think, to deal with some of their concerns, not all of them. But so I think I'd suggest to you that the amendments improve the underlying bill, and it was an attempt for him trying to figure out sort of how to be responsive to that. So, and what happened at the Transportation Committee was Alderman Kirby and I did not support the underlying bill for all the reasons that have been brought forward here by our colleagues about the timing and about the larger issues, but we did support the amendments because we thought it did improve it.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
This bill is to allow us to serve by example. That's what I think I heard Alderman Budge say. But there is no guarantee that the employees of said businesses will park elsewhere. Actually, we'll free up spaces so more of them can park in Hillman Garage, because we will have removed our employees from the garage. I mean, really. So what's the guarantee? We inconvenience our employees, and there's no guarantee that it's going to benefit or that anyone else will take advantage and make their employees go elsewhere. I mean, we've given them discounts in the other garages. I think Alderman Kirby had discussions with the business owners to try to do what they could do to get their employees to move. I don't know why we would think that inconveniencing our employees is going to make them do something different. And I appreciate the amendments. I mean, it's better, but it's still the same issue. And I'm not sure SP Plus has given us, I mean, not by what I see driving into the garage. Maybe you guys are seeing something different. But the last time you've seen that garage full, it was probably a football game or something. But that's all I got.
So I think we should vote Alderman Kirby first
Yeah,
on the
just let me-
amendment and then to the general.
Let me
bill
just,
after that.
all I'm gonna simply do is reiterate what Alderman Alderman Pfeiffer has said. We've gone through amendment, as amended, the bill as amended, and the Transportation Committee. We accepted the amendments, however, this came back to this full council with the negative to not do this. So I want to make that crystal clear. All right, thanks.
If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
I don't know, maybe
Were
roll
we
call.
voting on the amendments?
Not the budget.
Yeah, okay, yes.
What's that?
I'm in favor of the amendments, I'm not in favor of the amendments.
Just the amendments, okay. I believe the ayes had, unless someone wants a roll call vote. Okay. Now we'll go to the underlying legislation. So all of those who are in favor, as amended, accepting O2817, or is there a motion to adopt O2817 as amended on second reader?
So move.
Is there a second?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm a little confused. I'm looking at Amendment 2 and 3 in front of me. Is there an explanation why we're not doing those? That I missed?
We did.
Yeah, I believe we took them all at once.
Okay. Well, okay, that's okay with me.
Okay.
It's just-
Did the amendments pass?
Yes, the amendments
Oh.
passed.
But now we're discussing before we vote on the final piece of legislation. So is there any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
No.
No. And those have it. So we don't need to move on to third reader, do we? All right. It's been defeated. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present? Yeah. Please present our next item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Next item is a second reader, O3017, establishing an audit committee.
Is there a motion to adopt O 3017 on second reader?
So moved. Second.
Is there a motion to amend O 3017 on second reader?
So moved.
Second? Second. Alderman Budge?
Before we go much further, I would like to thank the city employees who are here for the purpose of O28, who sat through all of this evening to get to this point, for your dedication, your input, and your service.
They
Thank
just
you.
wanted to make sure we were
Thank
doing
you.
the right thing.
All right.
To say nothing of your parking spot.
All right, there's two sets of amendments, the rules and city government and the revised Littman proposed amendments, so we'll let the rules and city government go first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have three amendments. The first one is on page 2, line 24, and that's to add the financial advisory, a member from the Financial Advisory Commission. The rationale behind that is to cross-pollinate, if you will, these financial ideas. We hope that a lot of the things that the the Audit Committee will be discussing will be important to also helping to formulate our advice from our Financial Advisory Commission.
Is there a motion to adopt the First Amendment? Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
2 noes?
Okay. The second amendment is also on page 2, and is to add as non-voting members of the Audit Committee, the Finance Director and the City Manager. They also are non-voting members on the FAC, and again, we want them participating in the Audit Committee for the same reasons we have them on the Financial Advisory Commission.
Is there a motion to adopt amendment number 2?
Move amendment number 2.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No.
No.
The third amendment is to, on page 3, line 31, to change from annual to quarterly meetings. Or is it meetings or reports? I can't remember. Meetings, I think. Quarterly meetings.
Is there a
So
mo-
at least meet quarterly.
is there a motion to adopt the third amendment?
Move amendment number 3.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
The ayes have it. We'll now move on to the revised Littman amendments. Alderman Littman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Amendment number 1 changes from 2 to 3, the number of civilian members. It also makes sure that the civilian members are in 2, 3, and 4 years initial term only, so that's a stagger. That's the word I was trying to come up with, staggered. Thereafter, there'll be 3-year terms. The idea being that whenever there's a council turnover, you'll want some continuity on the committee.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed?
No.
Amendment number 2 strikes auditor and inserts audit services. This reflects the sense of the council that the professional auditor could be an employee or could be based on a contract with a firm and so on. So it changes just the grammar, so it would be appropriate either way. So moved.
There a
Second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
And I might ask, since we have, and I've read through them before, other amendments, vote on them as a block?
Okay.
Do you want to take them one by one?
That's fine. I'll do the rest as a block. Thank you.
Okay.
Amendment number 3 changes who the auditor would report to, or the person providing audit services would provide reports to. Amendment number 4 also tweaks on the services that the auditor or audit servicer provider provides. You can see some tweaking in the language there. All this has been discussed thoroughly in committee. Amendment number 5, we took out the specific language that said how the rules would have to be established if they are established. Amendment number 6, This was adding some clarity again between an auditor versus a person providing audit services, and also provides clarity on the professional qualifications of the person providing audit services. We got input from the outside auditor on this, which was very helpful. Just as a footnote, what was previous number 7, amendment number 7, this was the standards that were going to be adopted. The outside auditor was critical of it, as was, I think, Alderman Budge, and Mr. Miller recommended just taking it out. I agreed with all those changes. So that amendment 7 that was contested is just removed. So this amendment 7 was the number 8 because of the renumbering, of course. Anyway, picking up on it. Alderman Budge had pointed out that the amendment as initially written, or the legislation as initially written, potentially got into some gray area with the roles of the mayor and city council. This added language in this amendment clarifies that the role of the mayor and city council does not change with this legislation with regard to this paragraph. And amendment number 8 changes the effective date to start with the new council, so that this council does not have the joy of having the initial audit committee. I move all those amendments.
Second.
This Alderman Arnett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, first of all, I'd like to be added to this legislation. I'd also like to thank Alderman Lippman. I had the pleasure of sitting on both committees that reviewed this. I think a lot of thought went into it. Mr. Miller did bring outside audit advice, and it really did help focus my understanding of this legislation, and I think it'll be a very important new feature in helping the city with its management of itself, its finances. So I certainly plan to vote yes, and do ask to be added as a sponsor.
Alderman Pan.
Mr. Mayor, I'd also like to be added as a sponsor. We discussed, I guess we're doing the amendments right now, and we discussed the amendments at some length before the Finance Committee, and I agreed then with all but one, I think, of the amendments. I strongly agree with the rest of the amendments. Good idea. I think we should have done this sooner than we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O 3017 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt O 30 on third reader?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Panladies,
Aye.
Alderman Kendall Charles,
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Lippman,
Aye.
Alderman Kirby,
Aye.
Alderman Pfeiffer, Alderman Arnett, Alderman Budge, Alderman Payne.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Mr. City Attorney?
Next on the agenda is another second reader, moderately priced dwelling unit amendments to O 3217.
Is there a motion to adopt O 3217 on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a motion to amend O 3217 on second reader?
So moved. Or yes.
Alderman Budge, you have the proposed amendments, so I'll let you speak to them at this time.
Okay, we received several comments from local attorneys and developers on this legislation, and we're responding to a couple of them. This amendment clarifies and makes explicit that we are in effect grandfathering any applications that are in the application pipeline right now that have been filed with planning and zoning, so that they have a consistent set of rules to work with in their review as they get evaluated by P&Z. I feel strongly that we should not be changing the rules in midstream on projects as they come through. As we've heard several times, Annapolis has a reputation of being a hard place to do business with, and past practices of us changing rules as we go along is one of them. That's this amendment.
Second.
All those, discussion?
Of course. I would say that I support the amendment, but I wanted to say that tonight we did demonstrate that we can move quickly because we're deciding in September.
Barring any other discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Budge?
So I have another amendment which I have printed and distributed on your desks. We had a fair amount of conversation with the construction of the MPDUs and how they differ or are similar to the rest of the units in a development. We had some specific suggestions on how to change this. The intent of one of the intents of this legislation is to clarify that the MPDUs have to be essentially in the same ballpark as the other units in a development. Their interior appointments don't necessarily need to be as fancy. You can have you don't have to have granite countertops and that kind of thing, but it has to be basically the same kind of unit. We had some great exceptions to this, where in a couple of cases the developer had taken the plan for a regular market rate unit and put a wall down the middle and turned it into 2 MPDUs. So on the outside it was similar to the rest of the units, but on the inside it was half size and nobody wanted to buy it, and so that was one of the underlying things in this basic legislation. The question that was raised was, can we quantify what kind of floor space we're talking about here? And after discussing it with, some numbers were thrown around. After discussing this with Director Gutwald, I decided to change or propose changing the criteria, which right now is generally consistent, which is open to all kinds of, generally is kind of wide open to all kinds of things. Change that to equivalent, which connotes that you're talking about they have to be essentially the same thing. We didn't want to go with a quantitative 100% because in any development there are differences between units, even between the market rate units, depending on whether an end unit, a middle unit, or and so forth, the geography and layout of the development. So we wanted to connote that it's basically got to be the same thing without trying to quantify it, because that will lead us into an unending sinkhole of trying to develop quantitative rules for how you judge 100%.
Alderman Payne?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the problem I have with that is that I think where the quagmire that we would sink into would be one that would be created by this amendment. I think if we had a 75 or an 80%, I mean, that's something we can hang our hats on. I don't know how an inspector would decide whether something is roughly the equivalent. I think, I understand the spirit of it, but we had a lengthy conversation at lunchtime about quality of the materials, how that weighs into it versus, say, 75% the size of something else. I don't know how you measure those things, to be honest, unless we have something definitive down there. I don't know what the answer is, to be honest, but I'm not sure this amendment is the answer.
Alderman Arnett?
I certainly could, well, first of all, I'd like to be added as a sponsor, and I'd also like to thank Alderman Budge. This has been a problem that's been vexing for a while, and it's been very hard to move these units, and one of the reasons why it's hard to move them is that they have been very much less equivalent than the rest of the units. And I would remind my colleagues that one of the big reasons why the developers do this isn't because they want to be nice to people of lesser means, it's because they get huge administrative bonuses for doing this, both height and all kinds of other bonuses. So I don't think it's too much to ask them to make these units approximately equivalent in floor area, certainly in the exterior design, scale, and appearance. If you want to say that it's not 100% the same size, that it's, speaking to Alderman Payon, 80% or whatever number you would want to put so they don't have to be quite as big. But remember, the goal here is it's really kind of a substitute for workforce housing. And it is trying to provide housing for people who otherwise wouldn't be able to get it. So it's a worthy program, and we don't want to make the requirements so onerous that we discourage developers from doing it. But I don't feel what Alderman Budge has offered as an amendment here is going to do that. I do know, because I have a person that I race with who bought the last unit in Sailor's Quay, they are quite substandard compared to the other units. And I think that's one of the reasons why we've had to expand the base of people who are eligible for this, because we just weren't moving them. And the reason was because they weren't that desirable. And I think these changes will make them much more desirable and therefore achieve the goal of the program.
Alderman Kirby?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess Alderman Arnett has said it all. There was one unit that stayed on the market forever. When you, upon closer inspection, and you didn't even have to go inside the unit, it was totally off the beaten path with the rest of the developments, damn near hidden from view. We can gauge what's a substandard unit. I believe we'll be able to do that by just looking at the rest of the development. So these amendments have design purposes, and if we want to move the units, they need to be on par with the rest of the development.
Alderman Budge?
Yes, thank you. I'd like to call on Director Gutwald to see if he can expand on how we judge this wording and answer Alderman Payon's question.
Just don't tell my brother that I called on you at midnight to testify.
Is it good morning or is it good evening? Pete Gutwald, Director of Planning and Zoning. This is just clarifying in my mind, because I think the intent of this whole section gets to, it needs to be market rate, it needs to be the same and similar type of units, size of the units. And what we've done in the sins of the past are the sins of the past, but I think this clarifies it and makes it abundantly clear that they can't be substandard units, and they shouldn't be substandard units. We shouldn't have allowed substandard units to be MPU units. That wasn't the intent of this whole section of the code, and this just, we cleaning it up. I have not seen your equivalent, but I assume it just is of the same paragraph adding to it, so that's my extra 2 cents.
I thought he was leaving rather than face my questions.
He was getting a Coke.
So in other words, you would support this amendment? You think it makes your job of making the determination easier?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, no other questions?
All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Is that all the amendments?
Yep.
All right. Is there a motion to adopt O 3217 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Just a question. I just want to make sure, because we did discuss this at lunch, you don't get the advantages of doing the MPDU if you pay all the administrative adjustments, if you pay a fee in lieu of doing the units, right?
Correct.
That's in here. Because that was, to me, one of the most important changes, so I just wanted to make sure.
That was one of that as well as this equivalency concept were two of the major motivations for me for this legislation.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is there a motion to adopt O 3217 on third reader?
So moved.
Second.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Penley,
Aye.
Alderman Pendle Charles,
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Lippman,
Aye.
Alderman Kirby,
Aye.
Alderman Pfeiffer,
Aye.
Alderman Arnett,
Aye.
Alderman Bud,
Aye.
Alderman Pam.
Aye.
The ayes have it. We will take a 3-minute break.
So close.
And yet so far away.
City Council is now back in session. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present our next item?
Mr. Mayor, next on the agenda is Resolution R2117 on second reader involving stormwater management watershed improvement plan.
Is there a motion to adopt R20? 17? All right, is there a second? There's two amendments,
See what happened
the
at midnight?
Littman amendment and the Panelides proposed amendment, and I'll let the sponsor speak to them at this time. Alderman Littman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is not a substantive amendment. It's the name of the plan was called different things in different parts in the legislation, so this just adds consistency, so it's called the same thing throughout the whole resolution.
Is there a motion to adopt? So moved. Second? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is there a motion to adopt the Panelides amendment? Well, I was doing it out of order before, meaning you're supposed to ask if there's a motion to adopt, then go through it, but I called on them first. So is there a motion to adopt the Panelides amendment?
So moved.
Is there a second? Ms. Broadbent, would you describe the amendment as it came from the administration?
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, members of the
Good
council,
morning.
isn't that right? So thank you for considering the amendment. It's something that I really wanted to add on here. When we had gone through and done the early outreach for the watershed improvement plan, one of the things that I heard loud and clear was from our nonprofit partners, which is Back Creek Conservancy, Spa Creek Conservancy, South River Federation, is that it is advantageous for them for us to include their sort of sub-watershed plans in our appendix. So as appendices to our plan, so when they apply for grants, which are all projects for which we're going to get the credits, they're able to say to the agencies that are giving the funds that these are included as part of the city's watershed improvement plan. So that's the reason that I was hoping that you would entertain the amendment.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles.
Yes, as an aside, I would like to be added as a co-sponsor of this piece of legislation, please. Thank you.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Ms. Broadbent, does this also mean that we get credit for what they do, all of their projects?
We do indeed. So that is one of the questions on the 2 or 3 major grants is who receives the restoration of the stormwater credit for those projects, large and small, who receives the credit. So we have MOUs with these organizations and also one with St. Luke's Church that has a big exciting project that's going to hopefully have a groundbreaking in the next few weeks. But
you took us on a tour of that site when I had LGAG here.
That's right. That's
a couple
right.
months ago, or a month ago, whatever it was.
Yeah, it's been a while, but that one's ready to go. So this enables us to receive the credit, and it makes it so that they are in better contention to receive the grant funding.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Is there a motion to adopt R2117 as amended on second reader? Second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Mayor Panelides,
Aye.
Alderwoman Pendle Charles,
Aye.
Alderwoman Finlayson,
Aye.
Alderman Littman,
Aye.
Alderman Kirby, Alderman Pfeiffer, Alderman Arnett,
Aye.
Alderman Bud, Alderman Pam.
Aye.
Mr. City Attorney?
Be added as a sponsor.
Mr. Mayor, the next item on second reader is our Resolution R2217, which pertains to the proposed, which pertains to the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement, and the purpose of it would be to recognize, basically to recognize the commitments of the goals in that agreement as they apply to the city.
Is there a motion to adopt R2217 on second reader? Is there a motion to amend R2217 on second reader? There's 2 sets of amendments, the Littman proposed amendments and the environmental matters proposed amendments. Alderman Littman?
Thank you. I can speak to both, and the first set also has Alderman Arnett and Pfeiffer added. The amendments basically reflect the guidance we got during the public hearings and from staff, and I appreciate Ms. Broadbent's following this legislation and supporting it throughout. And so I can talk you through each of them, but I know you have them in front of you. If anyone has any questions, be happy to respond to them. Amendment number 3 on the Lippman proposed amendments, I think is worth calling out. This one expresses the sense of the City Council that the mayor shall endorse the mayor's National Climate Action Agenda on behalf of the City Council, which we were requested to do on multiple occasions. So I think we probably should take those amendments as a block and then take the environmental matters separately. So I'm moving all those amendments.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you. Moving on to Environmental Matters Committee, we had a couple extra thoughts that were not captured in the first set of amendments. The first was the concept that the city should be benchmarking its emissions, not just its own emissions, but citywide, so residents and businesses. And as this came up, Ms. Broadbent pointed out, Director Broadbent, I'm sorry, pointed out the city actually has a requirement to do that already in the code, just we haven't done it in a long time. We haven't benchmarked in a long time. And I think the last time we did it was 2007?
Somewhere in there. So some of you may remember the city actually did a lot of outreach, and we did, there was an energy task force, I think the year before I started working here. But then the city has a climate action plan, both one for the community and one for the city government as a whole with targets. We've done a couple of the report cards, if you will, and I've committed to doing one again after January. Got to get a couple other things behind us, but we do have. We're probably one of the first communities in Maryland that had one, which is probably why you don't remember. But we have one. We have some energy targets. We've done some really big projects as far as our energy reduction, which translates into greenhouse gas emissions. So I look forward to doing a report card for all of you so that you can see all the progress that you've made.
Thank you. And to keep the concept of trying to not just speak in broad terms, but to have specifics, this amendment specifically asks that the report be made by the end of 2018 and be reported back to the Environmental Matters Committee. Amendment 2, along the same lines of some of the pushback we got was people were looking for specifics. How are you going to do this? How are you going to make sure we do? But this is not an ordinance. It's not a budget document. So we had some limitations within those constraints. So we added in the line of that is this city council's thought that we were going to take these steps and we were going to provide adequate funding to do all the things that we talked about doing in this resolution. But of course, the guts of that will be borne out in next year's budget. So with that, I move these two amendments.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. Is there a motion to adopt R 2217 as amended on second reader?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Sure. Yes, sir.
Is
Mayor-
there any
Oh, I apologize, yes, discussion.
I scratching my head a little bit. I can't understand why, as a city council, we are doing this right now. I think that this reminds me of what I consider to be an inappropriate discussion that was had before I came on the council, where the council resolved to support Navy quarterback Lamar Owens and his problems with the United States Navy and the administration at the Naval Academy. It was inappropriate, in my opinion. I don't understand. We elect national leaders, or we elect people to Congress to deal with this. We don't really, it's not in our bailiwick. Now, it is in our bailiwick to do some of the things that are in this resolution. There's nothing wrong with setting environmental goals which I support. That's part of the bill. I certainly support the overall environmental goals that were put in the United Nations Paris Climate Agreement. I don't agree, as long as it's titled this way, I don't agree with the $3 billion the country agreed to as a down payment every year. The country agreed to throw in. I don't agree that China, the biggest polluter in the world, gets a free pass until the year 2030. I mean, how many of us have really read what's in here? I went out of my way. I found that it's a very complicated agreement. Agreement in itself is short, but the agreement with different countries is part of it, and that gets really pretty hairy. Now, I know it says as they apply in the city of Annapolis, but with the title the way it is and the different references that are made in the text, I don't really like that. Because I support the environmental goals that were set there, I'm not completely sure how I'm going to vote on this. I guess some people think it's funny how I'm going to vote on it, but I don't. I take it very seriously. And I don't know, I just don't know why this is in front of us as a city council. Thank you.
I think we all know how the vote's going to go on this, so let's try to make all of our comments brief. I'll just say this. I think this council's done a good job as a whole, not voting on national issues and staying out of it. We came into some of it with the non-discrimination bill that came forward, but we got through it with different versions of it. The actual Paris Accord, I had people go through and find the actual places that were applicable to cities, and it was basically about reducing emissions. And not only have we met them, we've actually exceeded some of the goals with our energy park, the contracts we have with Honeywell, and everything else. So as I said early on in the process, I said if the council votes forward this legislation, I don't think it's appropriate for the mayor, the way our form of government set up, to sign something and send it on behalf of everyone, but I certainly think a resolution is a fine way to go, and I plan to vote in favor, although I don't like the precedent of getting involved in national issues. So, Alderman Pfeiffer?
Thank you. I would just, you basically stole my thought there, Mr. Mayor. I think, I mean, what separates this from the example that Alderman Payon had is that this was born out of sort of, it came to our attention when the decision was made in Washington, and 300-odd mayors of cities across the country signed a letter. And a number of people in the city, staff, and members of the council said, hey, that seems like something we should sign because we support those same things. And the mayor said at that point, if you pass an ordinance, then we'll sign it. And I think that was sort of what would launch this process through here. So I get that it's a little bit out of our normal wheelhouse, but I think because of the unique nature of this and what was happening in other cities all across the country, it's worth doing to sort of get us to that point to be on record.
All right. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor, or is it a roll call? Or all those in favor, what's that? I'm tired trying to remember. Was there a motion?
Yes, we need roll call.
Madam City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Mayor Panlidis?
Aye.
Alderman Kendall Charles?
Aye.
Alderman Finlayson?
Aye.
Alderman Littman?
Aye.
Alderman Kirby?
Aye.
Alderman Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Alderman Arnett? Alderman Budge?
Aye.
Alderman Payon?
Reluctantly, aye.
Mr. City Attorney, would you please present our next item?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Good night, Alderman Littman.
the next item on the agenda is on first reader 04117, Market House Tenant Lease Extension. That wasn't on the consent calendar, so
No.
we've moved it to the end of the agenda.
It was not, all right, perfect. Is there a second? Any discussion? I'll just say very quickly, this was a Plan B that we had talked about at a meeting. I believe Alderman Arnett and other people asked me if I would introduce legislation to extend the current leases a year, and that's what this does. So if there's no other discussion, Alderwoman Finlayson?
Mr. Mayor, I would like for us to seriously consider having a plan as to how we will move forward. I know that's a novel idea, you're laughing over there, but I think the community will appreciate knowing that not only is there gonna be an extension, but what's gonna happen during the course of that, so that in a year, whomever is sitting in these seats, they'll know what the next steps will be.
Yeah, I think all of us around this dais and even people at home would like to see something well before a year. This was just to give certainty to the current vendor and the public that operations would be in continuation. There wouldn't be a lull in it. I hope to have this decision long before a year, whether it's done by this council or the next one. So this was a Plan B, worst case scenario. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Refer this to the Economic Matters and the Finance Committee. Mr. City Attorney, would you please present the next item?
Mr. Mayor, next item is, was taken from the consent calendar, 03817, allowing indoor theaters in the professional office zoning district.
038, it was removed from the consent.
Is there a motion to approve 03817 on first reader?
I'll move 03817.
Is there any discussion?
Yes. While I have absolutely no problem with the Compass Point and the intent of this legislation to accommodate such a great resource that we have, I have spoken to Mr. Gutwall concerning these P districts in the different wards. And I was looking through Ward 3, and I realized that this literally comes extraordinarily close to home. The Forest Drive mortuary would include 20 to 25 homes within that vicinity, and to be totally transparent in that, it totally abuts my own property. So I've talked to Mr. Gutwall, and I will be speaking to some of the residents about this, and more than likely will be working with Mr. Gutwall to proceed with a piece of legislation that will address the issues. There is another piece of property, I think it's 1835 Forest Drive. It's a medical offices complex, but it's right next door to the older Fairfax community, and I will be discussing this as well with those residents, and I'm certain there's probably at least 40 or 50 homes in that community. So it does hit very close to home, and like I said, while I have nothing at all against and a proponent of Compass Roads, I will be working with Mr. Gutwall's office on a piece of legislation as far as an amendment goes.
I'm trying to think about what the remedy would be. First of all, I'm not sure I understand what the problem is, but even above that, is it because there would be more activity, more parking?
Yes, yes.
Okay, and right now this changes it to a permitted use. Would it be better if this was permitted subject to standards?
That's a possibility. Mr. Gutwall and I had a brief chat before council meeting tonight.
Okay, but right now, it's up for first reader, so we
Yes,
can't even
but
get
I
into
just wanted to
that.
put that on the record and everybody on notice.
Okay, all right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Yes, everyone, other than Alderman Kirby, has
Don't use that word.
will be impacted by this legislation. So I ask that you be sent a map to show you where it impacts your particular wards. So I hope you've received those.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. I refer 03817 to the Planning Commission and the Rules and City Government Committee. Mr. City Attorney, would you?
I didn't hear you. Say that again.
If it has to go to the planning commission, will it be able to?
May I? We worked out a calendar, and so it's going to be on the Planning Commission's agenda for the September meeting. Because their meeting falls after it's going to be on for public hearing at the first meeting in September, and then it'll go to the Planning Commission the very next day or sometime in close proximity to that date. But we worked it out on the calendar and with the city clerk, and
You're good.
I do my best. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I believe that completes the agenda. That, I don't think that got on the agenda tonight.
What's 042, is that?
That's this one.
Oh, yes, we did that at the beginning. I think we amended it at the beginning of the agenda.
I thought that was for 41. Oh, yeah, we did 41. Yes, we did.
Okay.
That's the one.
For 4217, is there a motion to, is there a second? Real quick on discussion, I'll make this very brief. We've come into issues before with adequate public facilities, whether it's the former Crystal Springs project, the Rogers property, other properties that have gone forward. So this doesn't affect any of the past ones at all. It just lays out a timetable forward, which is they have 5 years to meet the details of the annexation agreement, and then after 10 years they're considered null and void. So it puts pressure on everyone around the table to move forward in a timely manner. So that's the purpose of the legislation. So if there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. I refer 04217 to Rules and City Government and the Planning Commission. If there's none,
I don't think it has to go to the planning commission, it's Title 22.
then
so-
I rescind saying
Yeah,
that, then yes,
okay.
thank you. It's Rules and City Government. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Yes. Oh, yeah, that's right. Birthday to you.
No, as you know, I've enjoyed my last 8 years with the, sitting here on the city council. I do not intend to seek, the Ward 6 seat in this upcoming election. After much and tough consultation with family and some things that I personally need to do, it's been determined pretty much by myself that I think it best I step away, but I've enjoyed being the elected official for Ward 6 and serving Ward 6 and the people of the city of Annapolis on an even larger scale. I won't disappear from politics. I'll be very close to the vest right now, but in the best interest of getting some things done for Kenny, I think it warranted me to step away. So, thank you all.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Now I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.
16-hour day.
We're out of shape.
Oh, it was a